Hello! So, very weird intro for this video. I would like to apologize kasi agad for the quality of the recording. Nag-reset yung setting kasi nung mic na ginagamit ko, so the audio won't be as good as say yung John Wick Chapter 4 review or yung Voltes 5 review. So you have to bear with me sounding like I'm using a karaoke mic. But still, enjoy the rest of the video as much as I enjoyed watching Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Cue intro.
Now, I'll begin this video siguro by giving you an advice from one Marvel enthusiast to another, no? Kung ganito na yung routine mo, that's great. That's awesome. Pero kung hindi pa, I suggest you try it. Ito yung kapag may lalabas na Marvel movie or series, papanoorin mo muna yung nakalipas na movie or series na relevant dun sa lalabas. For example, for Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, di ba? I have a review of that right there. I had to watch the first Ant-Man movie, Civil War, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Avengers Endgame, and select episodes of What If. Now, kung di mo pa napapanood tong Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, kung nagbabala ka palang manood, I suggest you revisit muna the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame. Yung What If episodes na kasama si Star-Lord, kahit hindi naman na yun. Pero you should also watch yung Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas Special sa Disney Plus if you have a subscription. Pero kung gahol ka sa oras, at least watch the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and yung Christmas Special nga. I highly encourage you to do so kasi sayang yung linamnam ng movie. Especially kung di mo na malala yung arcs of some of the characters. Lalo pa na, well, it isn't a spoiler to say na itong movie na yung swan song for some of the people involved in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Si James Gunn, yung director, co-head na siya ng DC Studios. So, there won't be a Marvel project with him at the helm in a while. Si Dave Bautista, very vocal din na ito na yung last niyang portrayal ni Drax. Si Vin Diesel, si Family Guy, ito na rin yata yung last portrayal niya ni Groot. Tapos si Sean Gunn, yung kapatid ni James Gunn, he'll be voicing a character na in Creature Commandos, DC project. Pero, well, spoiler alert, minor spoiler for the post-credits, well, the mid-credit scene, kasama pa rin si Kraglin dun sa lineup ng bagong Guardians, so fingers crossed, I guess, for him. Pero my point is, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 will bookend some of the characters. And sayang kung hindi mo maalala yung arc nila leading to this movie. And ang sayang panoorin yung ending nitong movie na fresh pa sa isip mo yung multi-movie story arcs nila. Now, how was the movie? Very satisfying. Very, very satisfying. Okay, rank na natin agad. I still think that the first Guardians of the Galaxy is the best among the three, but that's because that movie set a bar that's impossible to clear. So, number 1 pa rin yun. But immediately below it is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And by below, I mean by a hair below yung Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And then at the bottom is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Now, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 really left a sour taste in my mouth. Even upon rewatch, nabore ako. Particularly, I guess because yung comedy in that movie is so OA na. To the point na compromise na yung kwento. And for this movie, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, ito yung fear ko na maulit eh. Yung overabundance na naman ng Marvel comedy, that's very tiring for some people at this point. Pero I'm happy to report na hindi. Na hindi siya overwhelming in this movie. Balanse, kumbaga. Yung gawing hindi overwhelming yung comedy in a franchise that's very much married to comedy, that's very hard to pull off. But I think Guardians 3 did just that. And I'm very glad that that's the case kasi sayang yung denive nung kwento nitong movie na to kung overshadowed lang ng mga patawa ganun. But that's not to say na walang comedy itong movie na to. There is still comedy in this movie, pero balanse. Kaya satisfying. Satisfying for me. That's going to be a recurring word throughout this review. Satisfying. Now, let's talk about characters, shall we? And it'd be very difficult for me to start a discussion on characters nang hindi nagsisimula kay Rocket. Now, the trailers for this movie hinted at an extensive backstory of our favorite raccoon, and that is what we got. And carefully marinated din yung mga flashbacks kay Rocket dun sa movie, ha, mind you. Every now and then magfa-flashback to Rocket's past, and that worked 95% of the time for me. Siguro there's one or two flashback scenes lang na medyo awkward yung timing, na sabi ko sa sarili ko, oy, wala naman si Rocket doon, bakit may flashback to Rocket bigla? Pero most of the time, pabor ako dun sa pasok ng mga flashback sequences. Again, carefully sprinkled sila throughout the movie, and I applaud the editors for that. Now let's talk about the whole Rocket backstory itself. Very heavy, very emotional, very violent in some parts. Like there were actual flashback scenes na nagulat ako eh. Sabi ko, oh gosh, I'm pretty sure this is PG-13, but did they just show that? But to end the discussion on Rocket siguro, I would say na naramdaman ko talaga from this movie yung pagmamahal ni James Gunn for the character. Even before the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie came out, very vocal siya na si Rocket yung favorite niya sa Guardians. And it showed in this movie. Of course, we have Peter Quill then in this movie, and I would say na the way they wrapped up yung kwento niya, very satisfying din for me. Like they gave him the Rocky Balboa ending from Creed 2. Need mong panoorin yung Guardians 1 kasi meron siyang relative sa opening scene ng movie na yon that's tied to his ending in this movie. So, ayun. Siguro that's my segue na rin into talking about Gamora. The way they wrapped up Gamora and Peter Quill's story is very satisfying din for me. Now, do remember na sa Infinity War in love sila sa isa't isa. Diba pinapanood pa nga sila ni Invisible Drax. Pero that version of Gamora, the version that Peter Quill loved, she's gone. She's dead. She came back somehow, but that Gamora has yet to develop a relationship with Peter Quill. Diba niloblow pa nga niya dun sa Endgame. So their liking for each other, or at least Gamora's liking for Quill, had to start again from zero. And, well, minor spoiler alert siguro, I'm glad na hindi 100% by the end of the movie yung relationship nila. I'm very glad that the movie's brave enough to say na, okay, their relationship by the end of this movie won't be as deep as their relationship in Infinity War. If we're re-exploring their development for each other, there's room for that. Pero for now, eto sila. And I understand that some people might be disappointed. I haven't read the reviews, but I assume people will be. But I am satisfied nga sa kung saan nagtapos yung kwento nila. Now let's talk about Nebula. Napaka-satisfying din nung arc niya. Sasabihin ko na naman yung sinabi ko kanina. Please revisit the previous movies kung hindi na fresh siya yung arcs ng ibang character. Especially with Nebula kasi siya yung nag-evolve throughout the films from being a villain in Guardians 1 to being an essential member of the Guardians of the Galaxy in this movie. I would even go out and say na yung portrayal ni Karen Gillan kay Nebula in this movie is the best out of all the time she played the part. Akala ko there's nothing topping her performance in Endgame, but there's Nebula in this movie. Sana G pa siya for future movies. Oops. Spoiler alert, she lives. Same goes for Drax and Mantis actually. Sabi ko recurring to eh. Satisfying. Now Drax's backstory from the previous Guardians movies plays into his character development here in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Kung saan nag-conclude yung kwento niya, it makes sense why he's the one to do that. And I thought that was great. Si Mantis, we get a full demo of her abilities dito sa movie na to. May scene na Jedi mind trick niya yung mga kalaban niya. And tawa nga ako ng tawa kasi ang angas. Tapos again, satisfying kung saan natapos yung kwento niya. It makes sense why she's looking for the version of herself that's under the command of no one. And andun pa rin talaga yung dynamic ng dalawa, ni Drax siya ni Mantis. Yung chemistry, yung banter, yung palitan nila, ang galing pa rin. That started in Volume 2. that showed in Infinity War that carried over to the Christmas special and nakita rin in this movie, and I thought that was neat. Now with Groot, I guess I wanted more from him, but at the same time, I kind of predicted, even before seeing the movie, I kind of predicted already that he'll be sidelined in this one. Now, alam naman natin ang mag-tandem from the start is si Groot at si Rocket, di ba? They've been the dynamic duo since Guardians 1. But the backstory in this movie isn't theirs. It's solely Rocket's. So, I understand why hindi na in-explore si Groot, but they do some really cool stuff with him though. I'm not gonna lie. We'll talk about action later, but for now, that's Groot in this movie. Now let's talk about the villain of this movie, the High Evolutionary. For me, he served his purpose as the main bad guy. Yan, nagawa naman niya yung trabaho niya. Although minsan sigaw lang siya ng sigaw. Pero when the scene required him to be a menacing presence, Shock Iwuji delivers naman. Especially because he's tied to the past nga of Rocket. He's the one who experimented on Rocket kasi. And like what I mentioned kanina, there were scenes that were very violent and they were effective largely because of his performance. So I applaud him for that. Si Adam Warlock, hindi ko in-expect na tatanga-tanga siya in this movie. Maangas naman siya. We got a full demonstration of his abilities in this movie. Although I would say na I think I could picture a version of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 na hindi siya kasama. But then, I understand the need to satisfy yung post-credit scene ng Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 kasi under siya, di ba, nasa pod siya. So, that's why this movie had to include then si, what's the name, Aisha, yung High Priestess ng Sovereign. Yung jokes na hit or miss para sa akin, madalas involved si Adam Warlock. That's why medyo naguluhan ako sa direction ng character in this movie. That's until the finale though, where he played a significant part and nakakatawa yung dun sa dulo yung awkward na yakap. So that was fun. But yeah, Will Poulter did a good job. I took issue only with the writing siguro, not the portrayal itself. Napunta tayong action again. It's satisfying how everyone got their moment to shine. Si Drax the Destroyer, we see him destroy perhaps for the final time. Si Mantis, again, yung pag pinapasayaw niya yung kalaban, ang angas nun. Alam mo naman yung knife skills ni Gamora. Si Nebula, may bagong weapon that I don't think we've seen before. Si Groot, OP, naging mulawin siya at some point, tapos medyo lumalaki pa nga siya at times. Si Rocket, tsaka si Quill, alam mo naman how they operate pag may hawak silang barel. Heck, even Cosmo and Kraglin got their moment. Nakakatawa nga actually yung dalawang yun I forgot to mention. For some reason, I thought of Grogu nung ginagawa ni Cosmo, whatever he was doing dun sa dulo. Tapos si Kraglin din, remember di ba naman niya yung Yaka arrow from his boss, di ba si Yondu. So there's a cool scene na ginamit niya yun. Tapos may scene sa hallway sa third act ng movie, and what's up with Marvel and their hallway scenes? Pero may scene dun sa hallway na it's made to look like it's one take, and ang angas, sobra. Yung music dito sa moving to, what is there to say pa ba sa mga soundtrack nitong movies na to? Mga 2 buwan ko na namang papakinggan yung soundtrack nito sa Spotify malamang. There were moments na ang angas din ng pasok ng orchestral sounds nung score mismo na kinompose for this movie para may variety naman, hindi lang yung puro 80s or 90s hits yung nagpi-play. Especially during the heavy scenes na binanggit ko kanina, doon magpi-play yung mga choral, yung mga choir, doon maririnig yung parang choir music. And it was bone chilling to a point. Sa special effects then, what more can you say, 'di ba? To say na yung special effects dito sa movie na to is still the same standard special effects na makikita natin in all Marvel movies, that's an understatement at this point. Matagal na nilang na perfect yung CGI kay Rocket nung Guardians 1 pa lang. Pero there are close-up shots of Rocket and his animal friends in this movie na ang sarap panoorin, lalo na pag maganda yung sinehan na pinapanooran mo. Siguro upon rewatch or pag nirelease siya eventually sa Disney Plus, pag napopause mo na yung movie, may makikita kayong lackluster na effects, but seeing it the first time, wala naman akong nakita. So, yeah. There's a mid-credit scene and there's a post-credit scene. So, need mo talaga magstay sa sinehan for 2 hours and 30 minutes. So, no fluids bago magumpisa yung movie. But to conclude, if this is indeed the last time we're seeing the Guardians together on the big screen, I'm glad that it happened in this quality of a movie. And it's been a ride. Almost 10 years then, diba? Since 2014. So I guess thank you, K. James Gunn, for bringing the Guardians to life on the big screen and Disney+. I wish him all the best ngayong co-head na siya ng DC Studios. I hope yung ability niya to juggle multiple characters na part of a team or a group, sana mag-carry over yun sa DC. Well, we got a demonstration of that sa The Suicide Squad, which he directed. But now let's all support him as he does his best to become the Kevin Feige of the DC universe. So, yeah. And that's my review of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. If you have thoughts on the movie, let's have a civil discussion this time in the comments below, no? And still, don't forget to do that YouTube thing. Smash that like button, share, subscribe, and hit the bell notification to stay notified of any of my videos about movies, games, or anything fun. Ciao.